Welcome to the Monterey Bay Aquarium and the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute social media feeds. We are live right now, streaming all across the internet, hopefully to your feed right now from the Monterey Bay Aquarium social media feeds and the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute's or MBARI's social media feeds as well. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being there. My name is Patrick. I work at the aquarium in social media. Joining me from her home a few miles away, we have Emily, the other half of the social media team. Emily, how are you doing this afternoon?
I am doing fantastic, Patrick. Thanks for asking. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Although we do have to say that Patrick and I are not alone today. We have a very special guest star joining us. Patrick?
That is very true. If you can see there up on the screen, we have Emily as a puffin. I'm a ocean sunfish, and we have Dr. George Matsumoto tuning in as well, joining us here on the broadcast from his home. George, you are an anglerfish up on the screen. And George, how are you doing this afternoon?
Yay. We felt it was appropriate.
Well, it is so wonderful to go for it, Emily.
Say, if there had been a big red jelly icon, we would have used that one.
We would. And in fact, you know what? Just for that, I'm going to bring up the big red jelly right now. Tiburonia Gran Rojo up on the screen right now. And George, you should be up there on the screen there with the big red jelly here right now. So George, we are live to your feeds. We are live.
Patrick, we can't hear George on the stream. If we can
we can't hear George on the stream.
George on the stream. We're getting some feedback in the chat right now. Stand by, folks.
Stand by. George, go ahead and talk to us here a little bit. Oh, George, we seem to have lost your microphone here into the laptop. Are you still in the WebEx call or in the web chat? Oh, interesting. Nothing's changed. Interesting. And Emily, we can still hear you, right?
I think so. Here I am.
All right. Well, that is a mystery to me. We've got a mystery of the deep here going on right now. We don't seem to be able to hear George right now. We were hearing him just a little bit before. Yeah, George, if you want to leave the call and come back on.
All right. Well,
that'd be great. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for bearing with us. This is some brand new technology that we are testing out right now. But for those of you who are just joining us, you are seeing some video clips here that are from our Mysteries of the Deep special presentation that we do in the auditorium of the aquarium. And all of this is amazing ROV, remotely operated vehicle video footage from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute out here in the Monterey Bay and all around the world in the different expeditions that they have done. Emily, can you tell us a favorite animal here? I'll pull it up here for everybody while we look to get George back on the line.
Well,
this is George. Can you hear me?
Oh, wait, Emily? Go ahead and talk,
yes?
George.
This is George. I don't know if people outside of the three of us can hear me or not.
There he is.
I can see your waveform here. I am shedding tears of joy here.
Well, good. I'm back online then. So,
okay.
And we are looking at an amazing jelly. This is Deep Staria, which is a beautiful deep sea jelly. And it's got a hitchhiker, which we find fascinating because it always seems to have one hitchhiker.
And you know what, everyone? 5 minutes in, and we finally figured out our audio issues. I believe that is a current record here for all of us.
Yeah.
This is a new record for us.
Today it was 8. Today it was 5. It's going down exponentially at this point, Patrick.
Yeah, for all of you folks.
Everybody's recommendation to log off and log back in, it worked. So now we can see Tiburonia Gran Rojo.
Well,
this is
for all of you folks out there that are tuning in right now, we hope that you are all doing as well as can be under the circumstances of the coronavirus closing so many different things. So the aquarium has been closed now for over 2 weeks, and so we are streaming from our respective abodes. So thank you so much for bearing with all of us. It is really awesome to be able to have you here, George, to help us know a little bit more about what's going on in the deep sea of our planet right now, where not a lot of people have gone, period, and certainly is not really going on right now. So we're here to do a little bit of afternoon exploration of the planet's largest habitat. So now that we've got you back here on the line, let's get you going. George, can you introduce to us your work at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, and let's go exploring here our deep backyard.
Absolutely. So I'm a deep sea biologist. I study things like the jelly that you're playing right now, as well as other comb jellies. Jellies like this one, which is another deep staria. We saw a pale one a little bit earlier, and this is a related one. It also has a little hitchhiker, and this is what we would call its feeding mode, where normally it would have captured something and then closed up its big opening there, while the food runs around inside until it runs into one of the mouths. But I study the deep sea, and I love working in the deep sea, describing new species. I also work with students, and I also run an Adopt a Float program if anybody wants to get involved in that program, where we're launching floats in the Southern Ocean.
That's right, and we actually adopted one of those floats.
Just adopted one.
Yeah, Emily, do you want to let the folks know what the name was of our float? We're very proud of it.
In case you missed it, introducing to the world, we adopted a float and we got to choose a name for it. And so, of course, we went with the classic Floaty McFloatface. So it's going to be out there exploring down in the Southern Ocean, and we are so excited to see what Floaty brings back.
It is. It's been launched. It should be out there for the next 5 years or so, and we are looking very much forward to seeing what comes back.
We are also very excited about it. Thanks for helping us out with that. Was it you who drew the picture of Floaty on Floaty, or was that one of the researchers?
It was not. It was one of the researchers, a graduate student from Scripps Institution of Oceanography, a fellow named Channing. And he's still down there. They're steaming their way back to the East Coast because, just like a lot of other ocean researchers, all the science expeditions have been canceled and all the ships have been recalled to port. But they gave us permission to launch the float.
Well,
that's wonderful. And George, I'm going to put Floaty McFloatface here up on screen over on top of the carnivorous harp sponge. So there's Floaty McFloatface there, everybody, in case you're wondering. That is the Monterey Bay Aquarium social media team's contribution there to the Southern Ocean science that you are doing, George. Okay, enough of that. I'm going to take that down. George, thank you so much for joining us for that introduction. Emily, do you see any questions so far for us here? And then George, we'll have you guide us here on our deep sea exploration as I just keep pulling up different images here of deep sea organisms here.
Yeah, that's a great question there, Patrick. I think that we've answered a lot of folks' questions in the chat right now. I saw a lot of questions asking us to show off Floaty McFloatface, so I'm glad that we have filled that need right there. But we have been showing a lot of images. We had a couple of images that have just come up here that folks were wondering what kind of animals they were. I know that in particular, folks were curious about that Siphonophore that you just had up, if you want to go back to that.
Ooh, yeah, I'll pull up that Galaxy Siphonophore. Then, George, if you want to sort of take this Siphonophore and introduce us to the deep sea as we dive into your work. I've got the Galaxy Siphonophore up on screen right now.
Absolutely. So this is a beautiful, beautiful animal, and it is fairly large. It's a relatively new species to us anyway. It was described just a few years ago. It's an unusual one in that it has multiple stomachs. So I know some people are curious about how some of these jellies feed. And this one has multiple stomachs. It has tentacles that dangle down and lure in the food. Once the food is attracted to it, it pulls it up into the stomach. And once it gets into the stomach, it shares it with the rest of the animal. And so it's sort of like a fisherman fishing. You could see the little lures twitching there as you go up and down the animal.
That's awesome. And siphonophores are one of those animals where you start saying all of these words about deep sea animals, and we have to convince people that those are actual terms. So siphonophore is something that most folks have probably not heard about before, except they may have heard of a very famous siphonophore known as the Portuguese man-of-war, which is not one single jellyfish, as folks might think about. You know, we saw a few jellies at the start of the broadcast. A Portuguese man-of-war is a colony of stinging animals, and that's what you're looking at right here in these siphonophores. Imagine just a whole bunch of jellies stuck together, connected by that gut that you were mentioning there. Here's a few other siphonophores that your team has filmed out there. And siphonophore is one of those animals that we don't know a whole lot about on land, but is actually a major component of the deep sea, right?
That's right. And jellies turn out to be really important parts of the ecosystem that we really know very little about. And some of the siphonophores get up to 30, 40 meters long, making them the longest animals in the ocean, in the world.
Absolutely.
Hey, George, we've had a couple of questions come by here, and I thought that we could just do a little bit of a deep sea quick FAQ for folks. In particular, can you tell us a little bit about what it means when we talk about the deep sea? Like, how deep does it mean when we talk about the deep sea? Where does that start in the ocean? How deep does it go? What is this habitat that we're talking about right now?
That's a really good question. So for me, the deep sea is pretty much anything beyond scuba depth range, because those of us who like to go scuba diving are used to being in the ocean, and that's all reachable area. So once you get beyond scuba depth, to me, that includes the deep sea. So I would call the deep sea anything from, say, 30 meters all the way down to the bottom of the ocean at 11,000 meters. So it really is a huge, huge habitat, and probably the largest habitat on Earth.
Exactly. And
absolutely.
A lot of this, actually, all of this footage that you are seeing right now is footage that has come straight from our backyard right here in the Monterey Bay. We're really fortunate to be located right where we are here, particularly where the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, right at the mouth of where this deep sea canyon forms out in the bay, right, George?
That's right. So we have the largest submarine canyon on the west coast of North America. It goes down to 4,000 meters. And the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute uses remotely operated vehicles or robots to go down into the ocean to do all this exploration and research for us. And these images that come back are just spectacular, whether there's some deep sea corals off some of the seamounts or some of the anglerfish or bizarre animals down there. Some of my favorite animals that we work with include things like the spookfish, the vampire squid that we started off the show, and then probably one of my favorites is the bloody belly ctenophore that we showed briefly while we're introducing ourselves, and that's gone away again. But Patrick should be able to bring it back up at some point.
Yeah, George, you had quite a few there in a row. So here, let me pull up that barrel eye, that spookfish to start. I was just kind of going through there, the montage of the canyon, diving into it, and then the ROV there, Ventana, that remotely operated vehicle. There's that barrel eye, that spookfish that you were mentioning before, where those green orbs there underneath that clear casing, those are the eyes of the fish, not those two little orbs there on the front. Those are its nostrils there. So the eyes looking straight up there for the spookfish, allowing it to find its food and then swim up towards the surface there. And then you were mentioning that bloody belly comb jelly. I want to pull that one up right now for everybody. Lampoctius, however you pronounce that there. Yeah, so we've got the bloody belly comb jelly right there they were mentioning, and that is actually the photo that we were using in the promos for this live stream here. George, can you tell us a little bit about why the bloody belly comb jelly is this crimson red? We're not used to seeing too many comb jellies of that color. Here's here's a burrowie as an example. This is a comb jelly that I've seen near the surface. That's more that kind of classic jelly, clear with those rainbows dancing along the side, which are the lights from our ROV breaking up on the comb row. So that's some light diffraction there. But then we get to the bloody belly comb jelly that is that deep crimson red, and that's a very particular characteristic of many deep sea animals, right?
That's absolutely right. So we think that this red color helps these animals hide in the deep sea. So red is a color that doesn't really show up in the deep sea, so it's a really difficult color for most deep sea organisms to see. They don't have the ability. And a lot of the animals in the ocean, particularly the deep sea, are able to make their own light or bioluminesce. So if a bloody belly ctenophore ate something that was glowing as it was being ingested, because they don't have teeth, so they just swallow their food whole. If that animal's glowing, the light that comes off of that animal is red, and therefore nobody could see it.
Yeah, and that is.
And George, I was just gonna mention we had a couple of comments about the beautiful kind of rainbows that we see going down the sides of those teens of the ctenophore there. Can you talk about that?
Sure, the rainbow-like color that you see coming off of the 8 rows are a result of the cilia that it uses to move itself through the water. And the cilia are so close together that they take the white light coming from the remotely operated vehicle, from the robot, and they break it up into the colors of the rainbow. So it's called diffraction with the D, D-I-F-F-R-A-C-T-I-O-N. And it's sort of the same idea if you looked at a compact disc and you sort of held it up to the light and moved it around a little bit, all those tiny ridges on the compact disc would also create a rainbow. And that's what we're seeing with these cilia.
Awesome.
Yeah, excellent. And George, you were mentioning before there about that red coloration there in the gut to help hide the bioluminescent food, the food that might be making its own light. We have a really great example of that with this Tomopterus dancing bristle worm. I'm going to put that up on the screen right now, where you can see that this worm is very much see-through, but with that red gut there all down the middle. That's that same adaptation, but completely different group of animals, from a comb jelly, a ctenophore, to this worm, this polychaete worm that we have right here. But same type of adaptation there, that red gut to hide the glowing food there.
That's right. And it's a really interesting adaptation. And it's one that is a difficult one for us to prove because, of course, we don't get to spend enough time in the deep sea. And that's always one of our greatest regrets, is we would love to spend hours and hours and hours watching some of these animals. And it can be difficult because, remember, the robots are the size of cars. And these animals are just a few centimeters in length. And yet the pilots of the robots are so good. We get some great video, but we haven't asked them to follow it for 24 hours yet.
Yeah, interesting. I wanted to pull up here this animal while we wait. Emily, if you have any other questions, let me know. But the first animal I wanted to talk about is this pink tube here up on screen. I have the Pyrus Ohm up on screen. And the reason I bring that up is that this is an animal we often see in the deep sea, George, but this might be one of those animals that people might be more familiar with seeing washed up on the beaches, because every so often these members of that deep sea community do wind up near the surface and potentially washing up on beaches. And Pyrus Ohms are also known as sea pickles to some folks, and you may see Pyrus Ohms washed up on the beach every so often there, folks. George, you want to talk about Pyrus Ohms real quick? I have it up on the screen.
Sure. So Pyrus Ohms are tunicates. They're fairly highly advanced invertebrates. So they're closely related to humans, if you believe that or not. They're called Pyrus Ohms, which literally translates to fire cell, because they're intensely bioluminescent, so they can make lots and lots of light. They are filter feeders, so they're filtering out the water, and they are feeding on plant-like plankton in the water column. So they really do like to be up near probably the top 200 meters of the water or so. Once they fall into the deep sea, then they become food for a lot of the deep sea animals.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that up because you were mentioning that bioluminescence, that living light that animals make You're mentioning that as something that predators of bioluminescent animals have to defend against. And then you also have animals like these Pyrus Ohms, where their name speaks to how vividly bioluminescent there are these fire beings there of these Pyrus Ohms. And so that bioluminescence is something that you at Mbari, your researchers have discovered is actually a more of a standard than an exception. You know, on land, think of a few things that are bioluminescent. There are some mushrooms that are bioluminescent. There are some fireflies, obviously, that are bioluminescent. But in the deep sea, bioluminescence is much more the norm, right?
That's absolutely right. We probably over 90% of the animals in the ocean, particularly in the deep sea, are capable of making their own light.
That's wonderful. Emily, did I give you enough time to find some of those questions there?
Oh, Patrick, there have been so many questions coming
okay,
in,
perfect.
and we are going to do our best to answer as many of them as we can with the time that we have with George right now. Don't worry if we don't get to your questions today. We are going to try and make this a kind of regular thing, talking to some of our friends and colleagues over there at Mbari, and doing some more of these deep sea dives with all of you. But folks, a lot of them are wondering what some of the sizes of these animals that we're looking at right now are, because, you know, oftentimes, especially what I really like to point out, when we had that spookfish footage up just a moment ago, Patrick, is we show animals like that spookfish or that vampire squid, and folks get this picture in their mind that they're huge when it really depends on the animal. In the deep sea, you get these incredibly diverse examples of gigantism down there, as well as these really, really tiny animals down there. George, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
That's right. And if you want to think about the sea pickles or the Pyrus Ohms, that's a good example. Most of them are about 8 inches, I'm sorry, 8 centimeters, 4 inches or so in length. But in shallow water, in some areas, you could get some big enough for scuba divers to go into. So they really have a huge range in sizes. In the deep sea, we do get some examples of gigantism. So we have giant shrimp, we have giant sea spiders, we have all kinds of interesting things down there. And if people are interested, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute has this great YouTube channel. And one of the playlists on the YouTube channel is called Weird and Wonderful, which is a narrated short video series about some of these odd things that we find down there, including some of these giants of the deep sea.
And right now I have up on screen some of those things that appear to be giant in the video, but are actually really quite small in reality. So we got one of those anglerfish there. I just needed to put an anglerfish up on screen because that's your avatar right now, George. So we've got that one there. And then also, if you folks are looking at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute logo, so our logo for the Monterey Bay Aquarium is a blade of giant kelp that is wrapped up on itself. And the Gulper Eel is the Mbari logo there. And I've got the Gulper Eel up on screen. George, can you tell us, look at that mouth. George, can you tell us the significance of the Gulper Eel to Mbari? It's up on video right now.
So that's a really interesting story, actually. So I can't find anybody at Mbari ever who could tell me who decided that the Gulper Eel was going to be our logo, but we all like it. It's a beautiful animal. It's an intriguing animal. We do have them here in Monterey Bay, as you can see by the video. They're beautiful, beautiful animals. And as the name implies, they have this huge mouth and they just gulp their food down. So they're a great example of how when food is scarce, animals will take chances by just swallowing whatever it is they find and worry about digesting it later. Snakes do this on land, and in the deep sea, a lot of animals will do this as well, just because it's hard to find food.
So there you go, folks. Monterey Bay Aquarium logo, giant kelp, much more something that you find in the sunlit surface, and then the Gulper Eel there for the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute down there in the deep. Let's see, Emily, any other questions we should get to here?
Oh, that is a good question there, Patrick. We've had so many going by. Just curious about some of the names of the animals that we've had up on screen so far. I did see a few questions earlier. We briefly mentioned this animal and had the footage up at the beginning, but you mentioned a carnivorous harp sponge, Patrick, and then we swam away from that topic. So let's go back there. Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, you folks out there might be familiar with sponges like SpongeBob as being just a delightful sponge, but there are some ruthless sponges there in the deep. I've got that carnivorous harp sponge up on screen. George, tell us about this iron maiden of a sponge there that plankton have to contend with.
This is really a fascinating animal, and it is an animal. It's a sponge. Most sponges up in the shallow waters are plant eaters, plant-like plankton eaters, just like the Pyrus Ohm. So they're filtering water and eating some of the plant-like plankton up near the surface. But this is a deep sea sponge, and there's not much phytoplankton or plant-like plankton down in the deep sea. And if you were to take a close-up look at this animal, which we were able to do because we were able to collect some specimens, what we're able to find is that it is full of tiny spikes and thorns, and it uses these to sort of impale swimming food that's coming by, and then eventually it brings it over where it could ingest it and eat it and digest it and share it with the rest of the animal. Just a beautiful, beautiful animal.
And I'm going to put up here the ping pong ball sponge there next to it, another one of those sponges that has an adorable name, but a ruthless life history if you happen to be a plankton on its way by.
Yeah. I mean, one of the amazing things about the deep sea, and I've noticed a number of people, at least on Facebook, commenting that they would like to study the deep sea. We need more people to study the deep sea. A lot of the things we find down there are still undescribed to science. We haven't given them names yet. We don't know very much about them. So we need more people interested in exploring. We need more people interested in doing a little bit of research.
Absolutely. And I'm pulling up here some video of your scientists launching many of the different oceanographic sensors. We've got a long-range AUV, an autonomous underwater vehicle, or not a long-range one, excuse me, just an AUV going off the side. I've also got video going up right now of one of those arms of the ROV collecting a bumpy jelly so that we can study it back at the lab. We've got some collections of sea stars up on screen there as well. So just for all of you folks out there that are watching, there is a dedicated team of researchers, scientists, engineers, all working together at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute to try to bring you this type of video footage and also to study those animals there. I've got some aerial footage of Mbari in case you folks were wondering where that happens to be. Yeah, so that is just, and now of course we got a black screen. Hold on, let me get you some more video up. Yeah. So,
it's a great example of the fact that we have so many different types of jobs and talents and expertise at MBARI, at the Research Institute. We really need people who are capable in all different fields. So not just biology. Biology is kind of the obvious one, right? Because we're looking at cool animals. But if you look at the engineering and the programming that goes into programming the autonomous underwater vehicles, or the engineering that goes into building and developing some of the tools that we put out, we really need a full, diverse workforce. And the deep sea is just an exciting place to work.
Exactly. It's just one of those great moments of dream, teamwork making that dream work for us, having all of those amazing scientists and engineers all together in that same building there. You can really, develop these incredibly innovative technologies that you're using to study these animals and learn more about them. Patrick, I saw some questions going by earlier, and I don't know if we have the clip that people are talking about, but if you remember, George and Patrick, it was last year some of our colleagues came across a whole bunch of octopus in the deep sea.
Ooh.
Hundreds and hundreds of those female octopus guarding their eggs down in the deep sea. And I didn't know if we had any footage. I believe that we have some footage of Granelodoni.
Yeah, I will
talk a little bit about them.
I can certainly pull up one of those benthic octopuses, but I think that is the best possible plug that we have for all of you folks that are watching to head over to the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute's YouTube channel. So search MBARI, M-B-A-R-I, for the Research Institute, and you'll be able to see some of those deep sea octopuses hanging around that brooding area there. So I don't have that video clip loaded up right here, but that's excellent, Emily. That was one of the biggest discoveries recently. So up on the screen right now, George, I have Granelodoni, which is a octopus that lives on the seafloor. But can you tell us a little bit about that Octopus Garden that you all discovered?
Sure. That Octopus Garden was off of Davidson Seamount, and it was just a beautiful, was a point, maybe it was the Sur Ridge. I forget where it was actually. But it had hundreds of octopuses brooding eggs in water that was a little warmer than the surrounding water. So we think that might be a way of cutting down some of the development time for the eggs. And that's really important because this Granelodoni that you've got playing here, as far as we know, now holds the world record for maternal care, terrestrial or water, anywhere in the world. So we followed brooding octopus here in Monterey Bay, a Granelodoni. We followed her from, we think, right around the time she laid the eggs to a little bit after the eggs hatched. And it was almost 4.5 years that she sat on her eggs, guarding them and oxygenating them before the eggs finally hatched. And if they could go to a slightly warmer area where the eggs might hatch a little bit sooner, that's probably going to be good.
That's right. And for those of you folks who are watching there, my clumsy driving, I pulled up a map there of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary with that Davidson Seamount, a seamount being that underwater mountain that you saw there on the map. And then I clicked on the Benth octopus, which is not the Granelodoni, but that was the one that was swimming through the midwater, but one of those robust octopus is one of those octopuses that you tend to find near the seafloor. And currently up on screen, we have that octopus that you were mentioning there, George, that octopus mother that was seen with her eggs for 4 years, which, just to let you folks know sort of what that means, the lifespan of many shallow water octopuses is less than a year. The giant Pacific octopus lives maybe 3 to 5 years total. This deep sea octopus mother was seen with her brood for 4 years straight. So that is the longest brooding of any animal that I am aware of. Very much a record. So really amazing discovery there of that Octopus Garden. And also shout out to the other folks out there who have gone out there, to the Nautilus Live folks and other expeditions that have gone out to explore that area. Truly amazing video from that zone with these octopuses.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Patrick, I do want to be mindful of the time. I know that we don't have too much longer here with George. So I don't know if you had any last questions. I did see a couple more go by. If you want me to throw out another question for us right now.
Yeah, maybe we'll have one last question, and then we'll shoehorn that into a conclusion of sorts here, so that folks can head back out to their other scheduled content. I'm going to pull up some various animals here from the deep sea. But yeah, last question. Let's go for it.
Perfect. Well, I've seen a couple of these questions very similar go by most recently over there on YouTube. George, folks are wondering how global climate change is affecting the deep sea, and what are some of the things that we can do to help?
Oh, very good question. And it's a question that MBARI is very interested in right now. So if you looked at our website at www.mbari.org, mbari.org, you'd see on the website now near the bottom a whole section devoted to climate change. And some of the things we're seeing are a change in the oxygen levels, how much oxygen is in the ocean and where that oxygen is concentrated, and how that level is changing over time. We're also looking at ocean pH and how that might be changing over time as well. So those are two areas that we're very interested in, and we're constantly doing work in those areas. And if people are interested, I highly recommend that you follow us on Twitter or Facebook, or join our YouTube channel, our Instagram channel, because we will and always have posted some of our recent results on those channels, as well as on our webpage.
That's awesome. And while you were describing that, George, I was just putting up a sizzle reel of all the different scientific experiments that you have going on out there, from the environmental sampling processor to the benthic rover, benthic respirometry. We had some CTDs out there. We had the Mars node, long-range AUVs. You're not just staring at squid, although that is a really fun part of the job. You folks out there, yeah, you are doing a lot of work studying what is going on out there with the oceanography, the larger ocean around these animals as well. So thank you so much for that continued work as well, and shout out to all of those scientists doing that work at MBARI as well. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all very much for tuning in. And we're all looking forward to getting back into the deep sea once this shelter in place is lifted. But we're very glad we could share some of the work that we've been doing with you.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, George.
For you to join us here on our streams today, George, both here on the Aquarium's social media pages and MBARI's social media pages. It was an exciting opportunity for us to get you on here.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, George. Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you so much to all of you folks out there that are tuning in around the world, all across the various social media feeds that we were live on here for the Aquarium and for MBARI. Thank you so much, everyone. We're going to do this again very soon. Thank you for being here for our first episode of Mysteries of the Deep here remotely with Dr. George Matsumoto. Thanks again, George. Thanks again, Emily. We will see you again soon at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and we hope to deep see you again soon at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute's website and social media feeds. Thank you so much, everyone. See you again soon.